Okay, so just for an update, we're live on YouTube, but I know we're still probably getting attendees in.
First applicant in the meeting. Now he's disappeared. Okay.
We're still just waiting on applicants, and I believe we should be good now.
They keep disappearing, or did we move them into panel?
They're on the panelist list.
Okay,
now.
got it.
Yeah, the applicant team is here now, so we can begin.
All right, welcome back to the afternoon session of the September 15th Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing. We are beginning the afternoon session with item number 6, 65 Horatio Street, and I'm going to turn it to our Director of Preservation, Corey Harala, to take us through the agenda this afternoon.
Thanks, Sarah. And yes, first up is item number 6. This is LPC 20-09763, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 643, Lot 62, 65 Horatio Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District, a Greek Revival style house built in 1845. The application is to construct rooftop and side yard additions.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Please state your name for the record. You now have access to the slides, and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Jackie Pudivellan. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Jackie, we heard you for a minute. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I apologize. These are so nerve-wracking. I'm totally going to get a drink at the end of this day. I don't know how you guys handle it. Hello, commissioners and staff. It's really nice to see all of you. My name is Jackie Pudivellan. I am the historic preservation consultant for this project. I'm here today with Stephen Harris and John Wool of Stephen Harris Architects. The project we're showing you today is 65 Horatio Street, a proposal to raise the roof, construct rooftop and side additions, to alter a window opening at the side bay, to install new window openings at the rear facade, and to excavate at the basement and cellar. There will also be associated restorative work, which will be handled at staff level. Next slide, please. Page 2.
I can't control this,
Oh,
Jackie.
I'm sorry. Maybe, am I?
No, John, you have access to the slides. You just have to click the mouse on the slide itself, and then you'll be able to advance either using the mouse or the arrow keys.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Edith. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So 65 Horatio stands near the corner of Greenwich Street on the north side of the street. It's located at the northwestern corner of the Greenwich Village Historic District, where it borders with the Gansevoort Market Historic District. This proximity to a historic market district influenced the development of this portion of the village, as well as the history of this house. Page 3, please. The designation report notes that the south side of this block of Horatio between Greenwich and Washington Streets displays multiple periods of 19th and early 20th century architecture, with 5- and 6-story buildings unified in the use of red brick. Next slide, please. And the north side of Horatio is characterized by 3- and 4-story row houses, 7 of which are Greek Revival, including number 65, which you see here at the center of the screen. Next slide, please. Houses in the northwestern portion of the Greenwich Village district were built for tradespeople and merchants as development progressed northward from Lower Manhattan in the first decades of the 19th century. 65 Horatio itself is a modest Greek Revival house built in 1845 for a fishmonger who had a stall in the nearby Washington Market. When this house was constructed, the waterfront was little more than a block away, and merchants and tradespeople found it convenient to live close to where their shops were on the waterfront. 65 Horatio's lot is unique for having a side yard but no rear yard. as you can see here. It's likely that the lot that this house sits on was subdivided from that of the house that was previously on the corner to the east, facing onto Greenwich Street at number 63 Horatio Street, aka 832 Greenwich. 65 Horatio therefore was built out to its rear lot line and kept the side yard for open space. The house is subsequently approximately 20 feet wide and 25 feet deep, unlike the typical 40-foot deep row house. Next slide, please. So here's some historic photos of the building from the 1930s, 40s, and a designation in 1969. You'll note that in the 1930s and 40s, the house's side yard was occupied by a one-story sheet metal clad structure. In the 1920s, a truck driver lived in this house. It's not surprising that this house had what may have been a storage structure or a garage in the early 20th century, because this part of the village had a much more commercial character, as the market district just to the north was awash in garages for trucking companies that moved food out of that district. Next slide, please. And here is a close-up of the photo of that addition, which features standing seam metal siding and a pair of doors and a window. Close examination confirms that it's metal because you can see dents in the door and irregular joining at the seams. Next slide, please. And these are some historic maps. These show us, well, they help us understand the development of this house's site in 1858. The 1858 map shows us the house's rear wall lining up with the property line of the house that once stood on the corner of 832 Greenwich Street. This is why we believe it likely that 65 Horatio's unique dimensions are the result of its lot being subdivided off of 832 Greenwich's original property. Its side bay shows up in the 1893 map, and the one-story addition at the side yard shows up in the 1930 map in the bottom right corner. Next slide, please. In this close-up of the lot from the 1930 map, you can see the addition takes up the entire side yard, and the underlined number 1 indicates 1 story for a 1-story structure. Next slide, please. Page 10. This house has seen a number of alterations over time. It's had its own interesting evolution. The metal lintel caps at the front facade windows and doorways were added most likely in 1850s to update the look of the house to the Italianate style. The bay at the side yard was added circa 1890 to provide bathrooms. The wood fascia at the top floor was a later addition. As a close-up view of the 1930 photo shows us exposed brick. And sometime prior to designation, a studio window was added at the roof, and the side yard was excavated to allow access into a basement apartment from a side door that's installed at an altered window opening. Unfortunately, you can't see that in this photo, but it's beyond the wood fence. Next slide, please. These historic photos illustrate that modest 1-story structures were found elsewhere in the neighborhood in the early 20th century, when the character of this part of the village and the area to the north was a lot more industrial, a lot more commercial. You'll note that the 2 middle photos, the structures were also faced in sheet metal. These were a bit more crudely faced and cobbled together pieces of sheet metal. Next slide, please. And another common type of alteration that was happening in Greenwich Village in the early 20th century was the rooftop studio with large studio windows. These historic additions, which happened organically in the district, served as inspiration for the design of the proposed rooftop addition. Next slide, please. We also wanted to highlight 2 recent commission approvals for rooftop additions that were similarly scaled and also shown to be visible from the street. These are 317 to 319 West 11th Street, seen here. And next slide, please. And this is 66 Morton Street. These 2 locations were also near avenues where the additions were shown to be visible from the avenue. And next slide, please. And with that, I would like to introduce the architect, John Wool of Stephen Harris Architects, to discuss the design.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present this project. Joining me in this presentation will be Stephen Harris, so we will both be speaking. What you see before you is a rendered elevation showing all aspects of the proposed project. The one-story side addition, the restorative work, and of course, the studio addition on the roof. Since this is a rendered elevation, you're seeing this not as you would from the street, but you're seeing things projected and pronounced a bit more forward. The proposal is to, one, construct the one-story addition on the side, and to build the studio addition on the roof. In looking at the side yard structure, this is the historic photo that we were able to find. And after looking at it through many different high-res versions, we were able to determine that it is definitely a corrugated metal roof or metal siding. Our proposal is to recreate this with standing seam painted metal and to follow this exact in recreating it. So all of the dimensions and everything about it, we're trying to follow exactly. This shows the various aspects of the whole project, some of which is restorative work and some of which is new. On the ground floor, you see the painted metal one-story addition, recreating what was there in the 1920s and 30s. On the roof, you see three aspects. There is a slightly pitched roof that is rising up from the cornice that is slightly visible from the street, but very, very little. You see in the back corner of the property, the studio addition, and then you see a very small, low, dark stucco clad bulkhead that is sitting on the back of the property. On the side, you see both the existing condition where there's a sort of skylight now that is currently on the roof. You see our proposed roof here, as well as the studio addition and the bulkhead. You will also see that there's currently a yard that was dug out that allowed for entrance independently into this side door of the structure. And we will be maintaining access through that point through the entrance of the one-story addition. And then you see here how we are going to propose to take those existing double hung windows, lower the sill, turn it into a pair of doors that keeps exactly the same light size and same configuration, so that as seen from the street, the view will remain the same. On the rear, which is completely not visible from any public right-of-way of any kind, we are proposing to adjust the window openings. Right now, there are 2 or 3 types of windows on the back. We're proposing to unify it a bit. This is a rendering that we've had made that is a very precisely calibrated retinal image of what this would look like. And so you see all the 3 components here. You see the side yard addition, you see the rooftop studio, and you see the small bulkhead. There's also a small little light metal rail that is protecting a 6-foot by 9-foot deck that is accessed off of the studio. The materials are as you see here, which is historic mahogany double hung windows with appropriately historic dimensions. This is the existing brick facade and brownstone. This is the steel sash window that we are proposing, and standing seam metal panels. The sections, I think, pretty clearly illustrate what's happening. One of the things that may not be apparent initially is that in order to make the top floor actually work, right now it's about 5.5 feet at the edge of the window for the top floor. So we have lowered the floor slightly in order to gain a little bit of height here in the ceiling. And then we are asking for the ever so slightly pitched raising of the roof. You'll also see here in this next image how low the ceiling is in the studio and how that is set at 7'6", which is the minimum height that the DOB requires for habitable spaces, and how that is nestled into the back corner and down low into the lowest portion of the site, or of the framing that it can be. These are photographs of the mock-up, just illustrating the various aspects of it. And then these are views of the mock-up as seen from various vantage points. Its place of greatest visibility is here on the corner of Greenwich and Horatio. And there you see it back here. And then as you come down Horatio off to the far side, you'll catch a tiny glimpse of it over there. These are backing down Horatio Street. So this is looking at it from up across Greenwich, between Greenwich and Hudson. And there you see a portion of it up there. From across the street, if you look at view number 7, what you're seeing in the foreground is that railing for the small terrace that was accessible off of the studio. There is just a tiny leading edge of the studio that is creeping into view here. I don't believe that this, it's easy to see here, but probably about maybe 4 or 6 inches of the leading edge of the fascia of the studio is appearing in this mock-up image on view 7. View 10 shows it more or less as you see in the rendering, again, indicating the various components of it. And then as you get very close to the building, view 13, 14, you can't see it. And then as shown in the rendering that we've created in view 12, you do see it there on the side. These are some additional views, again, obscured by the trees and so many other things on Horatio Street. This is, it is not visible from the Gansevoort Historic District, but this is just a test to make sure. So all these photographs were taken from the Gansevoort District, looking south to the backside of the project. And then here's a rendering that again shows the components of the project. Thank you.
Hello, commissioners, and thank you for spending the time with us this afternoon. I'm Stephen Harris. There are only a couple of minor points I would like to add. As an aside, one of the things about this rendering is we have eliminated a tree. So there is a tree in that tree well in the foreground, which is eliminated so we can see the house a bit more clearly than one would otherwise be able to see it. I'd like to talk briefly about 2 things. One, the addition on the side, and the other, the penthouse. We've been working in the West Village on historic properties for over 25 years. We have watched the progressive, I apologize for the use of this word, but it's the only one I know that can make sense. The kind of progressive embourgeoisification of the West Village. It's a term used to describe the Haussmanization of Paris in the 1850s, where what had been a rather more vibrant and diverse neighborhood became more standardized, orthodox, and for lack of a better term, bourgeois. In some ways, this little addition, which is a recreation of what was there in the 30s and 40s, is a representation of a more diverse and vibrant history of the village. There is as well a 1-story little piece on the opposite side of the street. So it is not without other sort of precedents. I would put forward that were this there and we were to propose demolishing it, it would provoke spirited debate, sort of one imagines, because for exactly the reasons that we're proposing it. It refers to a different history of the village. It refers to a time when this was, I mean, the Gansevoort Market and the Washington Square Market were both powerful sort of and vibrant sort of wholesale food markets. And the idea that this shed adjacent to the house of a tradesman, I think refers to a different part of the history, but one no less important. In looking at, we have looked at this penthouse addition in a variety of ways. We have considered it with an opaque east wall. We've considered it with a taller bulkhead. we've gone out of our way to try to make it as both inconspicuous and as transparent as possible. I would point out that the roof of that is considerably lower than both number 65 next door and the Gosford building behind. So although it does fill in a bit of the sky exposure plane there, it is, when seen from most locations, considerably lower. And as John mentioned, it's 9 feet wide, it's 7.5 feet tall. How long is it? And about 15 feet across. So it's a relatively, I mean, it's about as small a room as one could make up there. One of the things I would mention as you go back and look at the mock-ups, unfortunately, the handrail becomes the most conspicuous thing in the mock-up, as does the bulkhead. So those two pieces, which I think are the most mute and least obtrusive parts of the things on the roof, tend to have a lot of sort of things. Happy to answer any questions, respond to comments, whatever.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, commissioners, do we have any questions at this time? Okay, not seeing any hands raised or any questions. Why don't we move to public testimony, and we may have more questions after that. So if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your hand so we can identify you, and we will call on people who signed up in advance first. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Kersavage to manage that testimony.
Okay, great. We had 2 people that signed up, Louisa Wenchell and Kelly Carroll. Louisa, we'll start with you, followed by Kelly. So Louisa, I've brought you in as a panelist, so you just need to unmute yourself, turn on your camera if you choose, and please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Louisa Wenchell, and I represent Village Preservation. 65 Horatio Street is a truly special building located at the very western edge of the Greenwich Village Historic District. Built in 1845, it represents Western Greenwich Village's initial development as a row house neighborhood connected to the Hudson River waterfront. Its first owner was a fishmonger in Washington Market, according to the designation report. That said, the house also has a highly unique and unusual features for Greenwich Village, which are its surviving side yard, projecting a very visible side bay window, and its wraparound 2-sided cornice and attic level, which show off its Greek Revival details in a way that few other buildings in this neighborhood can. The proposed changes would severely compromise these features and should not be allowed. The addition of the faux garage to the side yard, obscuring the view of the bay window and the side of the building, is unacceptable. The fact that a similar looking condition existed for a period long before designation in no way justifies its reintroduction now. Any addition here removing or obscuring the view of visible historic fabric of the building should not be allowed. The proposed rooftop addition is also highly problematic and should not be allowed. The existing very visible and intact Greek Revival rooftop is a wonderful, unique, and important feature of this house and should not be compromised as proposed. The glassy rooftop addition would entirely change its character. This house has been happily occupied for nearly 200 years with its attic floor intact, and the owners were aware of this feature of the landmarked house when they purchased it. Any changes to the rooftop other than those which are minimally visible should not be allowed. 65 Horatio Street is too important and precious of a site within the Greenwich Village Historic District to allow it to be diminished in this way. Landmark designation is intended to prevent exactly these sorts of changes and preserve critical and irreplaceable historic features of buildings such as this. We strongly encourage you not to approve the current application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, bring in Kelly Carroll. Kelly, you should be ready to go.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. The Historic Districts Council does not support this application. The rare presence of a side yard in Greenwich Village is not an invitation to develop. Rather, it should be celebrated and preserved, especially when it showcases significant architectural features of the building. While the proposed construction is based on historic evidence, this is a case where recreating a historic feature does not equate with being an enhancement to the property or the historic district. Instead, the proposed side yard construction will obscure the view of the bay window from the street, which we find to be a detraction. While Greenwich Village is characterized by historic glazed studio terminations, the proposed addition here reads as a glass box, not an interpretation of a studio. While this addition could be appropriate in other historic districts, it does not work in Greenwich Village. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yes, we do. In addition to GVSHP's testimony, Manhattan Community Board 2 recommended a few conditions, one of which was the approval of the side and below grade extension, approval of the change to the sunroom windows, approval of minimal reconfiguration of the roof, and denial of the visible rooftop additions.
Okay.
And that is also in addition to one letter in support from a neighbor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to turn to the applicant team and see if you'd like to respond to some of the comments made in testimony.
Yes, can I reply first?
Yes.
And then I'd like to ask the architects to also reply. First off, we hear and appreciate the concerns of the advocacy groups, of course. Our position is that this is a proposal that is emphasizing the early 20th century as a period of significance for this portion of the historic district. And in that context, the restoration of the side addition makes sense, and that the proposed rooftop addition speaks to the practice from that period of constructing additions with large glazed openings on row houses. Secondly, this house has seen a lot of alterations over time. It is not the pristine poor man's Greek revival that it once was. It's had facade updates in the mid 19th century. It's had its side yard excavated and a basement level entrance already installed in that side yard. Thirdly, I think just for practical reasons, I should say, I think practical consideration can be made for creating occupiable space in that side yard again, and for raising the roof, and for constructing a rooftop addition, simply because this is a comparatively smaller house. The top floor, I'm not sure if we said it now in the presentation, but the top floor has a ceiling height that's only about 5'8". The architect can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but it's really not a conveniently usable space. That's why the skylights are there. But when someone over a certain height is standing up in that room, you're really looking out through the skylights like you're at the children's part of the zoo, and you're in that place where you look up into the bubbles and you can see the groundhogs all around you. So it's not really practical to use that room as it is, just because of that low ceiling height. And then I'd also like to mention that at our community board meeting, which this had a really fun, active reception, and a really engaged discussion, the community board members were mostly saying to us that they found the idea of a rooftop addition intriguing here, but they wanted to see something different on the design. So for that reason, they did not approve the rooftop addition as it was presented to them. I just wanted to make that distinction. And now would one of the architects also like to respond?
Stephen?
I would point out that the bay on the side of the house, two things about it. One, its distinguishing characteristics, its cornice, its plan dimension, and its windows are still completely intact and viewable from the street. Second, that is not an original part of the house. According to the Sanborn map, that bay was added in the 1890s when they first had indoor plumbing. So, if one is to go back to the 1840s, you would take that off as well, because that is, at a different time, it wasn't there. The community board was spirited and very interesting. There was if there is a record of that meeting, it might be worth watching. There was a kind of ambush at the end where a vote was disallowed because there was not agreement among the commission. It's the only time that's ever happened that I can recall, at least in our experience with them. The other thing about this is not a side, I mean, this space and the backyard of the undistinguished, non-contributing building on Greenwich Street are the only missing teeth on Horatio. The entire south side of Horatio Street is intact and has a continuous street wall, albeit in some cases only 1 story tall. On the north side, it is only this rather unfortunate stockade fence and the backyard of what is a rental property to the east, which is a side yard. So, I mean, I think to characterize it as a side garden is a bit of a reach at the moment.
Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, not seeing any hands raised. I think we can move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. So Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and anyone who has a request to unmute, please do so now so we can call that vote. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And you know, as was originally introduced as having 3 components: the side yard addition, the rooftop addition, bulkhead and railings, and the restoration. And so the restoration work is being reviewed at staff level. So for commissioners, it's the presence of the side yard addition, and then assuming that there's some level of comfort for an addition, then the question of design and materials. And then similarly, the visibility, size, scale, and design of the rooftop addition. So Diana, would you like to start with this one?
Okay. I feel that I think the testimony reflected this as well, that the sort of box-like shape of the addition doesn't really reference as well as it might the skylight kind of addition that you see in the village, and I would like to see it modified to reflect that better. I'm also wondering, I think that maybe the materials of the side edition, though they are appear to be comparable to an earlier version of it, don't seem to be really appropriate. So I'd like to see a different kind of cladding on the side yard addition. And then obviously the stair bulkhead is rather visible, and perhaps they could do something to try to somewhat minimize that. It's going to be hard to totally relocate it because in there. So, but if possible, I'd like to see that stair bulkhead be somewhat less visible. So I think those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
Okay, thank you. I think that the side yard addition would be acceptable if it were no higher than the fence, and if it were set back like the fence is to expose the corner of the house. The floor in that space is already set down a few steps. If you set it down a few more, I think you might be able to get to where that could occur. It would allow for a greater visibility of the bay window. It would, I mean, I think the problem with this addition is that it looks and reads and has the volume of interior space as opposed to just some kind of shed or a fence. And I think it needs to kind of be a little more recessive in its expression. The fact that it's enclosed space per se doesn't bother me. I think it's the scale, prominence, and kind of architectural firmness of it that is problematic for me. I think that the stair bulkhead on the roof is the most problematic aspect of the rooftop addition. I think that if it were possible to incorporate the stair into the body of the skylight element, that would be better. That's not possible, then perhaps angling the roof or somehow making it less kind of an abstract volume, which kind of reads very intentional and kind of, I don't know, it seems to intrude into the form of the house. I think that I agree with Diana. The skylight, not how you can make it smaller. It's already only 7 feet off of the roof, but maybe it can angle down towards the corner where you have a bench. Maybe it, maybe you can explore the fenestration. Maybe only one side is glazed and the other is solid. I really don't know the answer, but there's something about it that does resemble, a kind of a miniaturized summer house as opposed to a rooftop element.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Devonshire?
Yeah, I agree with the comments about the bulkhead. I think it needs to be much less visible. The skylight also, if it's going to be visible, I think it needs to more closely conform to the shape of the studio skylights in the village. With the side yard enclosure, I'm having some problems with. I generally actually like the idea of that period of history in the village being replicated, and it actually, because a truck driver lived in the house at that point and clearly used the garage, and I like that part of the story. That said, I'm not convinced from Jackie's statement about it being metal clad because of dents. I didn't get enough of enough duration with those images to really be able to tell. I saw some dents, but they also suggested to me that it could have been impact on wood that broke the pieces of wood. In any case, if it is able to be determined that it was wood clad, I think it should be wood clad. I think it should replicate exactly, or as closely as possible, the garage structure that was there.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen? I think he's actually stepped out. Okay, Commissioner Bland.
Yeah, the side yard addition, I think I can support as is. I think that might be more appropriate, but I'm okay with it as is. The glass structure on top, I think doesn't yet read enough like a studio Greenwich rooftop edition, more like a brilliantly executed Stephen Harris edition, which I think in this case is just a little too stark. So I would suggest, I think it was Michael Goldblum's idea to, is it possible to incorporate the bulkhead and the studio glazed element as one element, that I think that would help. And if it could be slightly less visible, maybe the window should be canted in or something like that, so it's a little more like what we're used to seeing. Otherwise, I think it's an interesting, interesting proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
And I presume that Stephen Harris's client is not a fishmonger or a sucker.
I guess that he's part of the bourgeoisification of the.
Commissioner Lutfi.
It's a difficult, challenging project because, I mean, for a couple of reasons, but I think the addition on the top is the most challenging. In terms of the side yard, I would just lower it a little bit. It seems a little too high. Otherwise, I'm not having a problem with the materiality, etc. I do agree that the bulkhead has to move. And, I really think you can't lower the addition on the top. So I think it's a materiality issue. And probably what has to happen is that the sides should not be transparent, so that what you're seeing is glazing in the front. And it's not quite, it doesn't read so much as this ice cube on the top of the building.
Commissioner Jefferson.
The roof addition is a pavilion. And I think if they really looked at a skylight, angled glass, and angled the roof back, I think it could diminish the size of it and also bring ample light in. So I think that could be investigated. I think the stair tower could be incorporated within the angle of the roof angle. And I don't know what to do with the handrail. It's quite dominant from this view. So that should be resolved with staff. The side yard, because it was there historically, doesn't mean a lot to me, but if that's, proportion of it is too big, and it's fine. They could, the proportion is fine. It's fine.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson. Commissioner Gustafson? Don't see him. So I'm going to move to Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Yes, I can understand the argument for the side yard. I'm not entirely sure why it's a piece of history really that they wanted to bring forward, but I understand it and I think it's appropriate. I also think I have to disagree with almost everyone in terms of the rooftop addition. I actually think that, yes, it's true. It doesn't resemble historic rooftop additions in this area, but I think it is speaking to and has a relationship with this existing building and the way that the top, this 5.5 foot kind of Cornish roof piece story acts, which is unusual. It's not a cornice exactly. It's not. We also see the corner of the building, which we typically would not in another situation that didn't have a side yard like this. And it reads like a rectangular structure with a kind of an overhanging roof element. And so on some level, the addition is sort of mimicking the existing top of the building, which is unusual anyway. So I absolutely would approve everything the way that it is proposed.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Holford-Smith.
I don't want to repeat other comments that have already been said. I think the side yard is appropriate. I agree that I think that it should be lowered. The metal cladding does seem a little bit alien to me. I would think that a painted wood would be more appropriate. For the rooftop addition, I think I'm with the studio camps, where it should look more like an artist studio, not a glass box put down on top of the roof. So perhaps, you know, canting the glass, maybe sloping the roof of the stair bulkhead to minimize it, but bringing the scale of it down somewhat to make it look more like an artist studio, I think would be more appropriate.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you all for your comments. So I think where we are today is we will not take an action. We don't have enough votes to approve it as is. But I think that conceptually the commission has expressed support for a side addition and a rooftop addition here. And on the side addition, I think most of the comments were about looking to lower it a bit. One could also study the materials, looking at the historic photographs some more, and thinking about the current streetscape and its relationship to the building. And then on the rooftop addition, I think most people are open to seeing something and recognizing how low this is, but would like to see it reference a studio window a little bit more. And in doing that, that may help you find a way to integrate that bulkhead and also to think about that railing. So I think it just needs a little bit more work. The commissioners have given some good, thoughtful comments. So continue to talk to the staff, and we'll see you back very soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, we'll move to the next item. This is item 7, LPC 20-08756, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 473, Lot 1, 462 Broadway in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, a French Renaissance Revival style store and loft building designed by John Carreja and built in 1879 to 80. The application is to install canopies, lighting, and signage.
And the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the presentation. You can click anywhere to begin, and please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Edith, can you hear me?
Yes, Sammy, if you can
Thank
you can just click on
Okay.
the screen.
Anyway, good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Sam White from PBDW Architects. We represent Merengoff Equities. We're the owners of 462 Broadway, and I'm appearing today, or was supposed to be appearing, with Anthony Freitag from Wells Fargo, the tenant behind the application. I think he actually got called away. The let's just see if what the delay here is.
Sam, as you're finding the slides, I just want to note for the record that Commissioner Holford Smith is recused from this item and has left the meeting.
Okay, here we are. Okay, thank you, Chairman. 462 Broadway is at the corner of Broadway, Grand, and Crosby Streets. It has 3 street frontages. It's in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. It was constructed in 1880 for the Mills and Gibbs department store. It's 6 stories high. It has 400 feet of frontage on those 3 streets, making it the largest fully clad cast iron building in the district. These historic photos show it in what some people will call the good old days. It fell in hard times in the mid-20th century. In 2015, our firm was hired to do a full exterior restoration, which we did bring to the commission. I would note that the photograph on the lower right shows the new windows being put in at street level. The scope included stripping all the metal down and repainting it in historic colors, removing the red granite that was at the corner, and making a number of repairs. This drawing diagrammatically shows the scope of our restoration at that time. Elements in white, which include the piers and the columns and a portion of the cornice, are historic. Elements in green were replaced in 2015. So much of what you see in this building is new. This is the photograph of the completed restoration with the corner storefront retail area empty. And Wells Fargo has leased the corner of this building, and they are applying for permission to install elements on the facade or visible from the street that are a part of their corporate brand identity. Some of these items can be approved by LPC at staff level, and a number of the elements will require a public hearing, including a canopy over the doors at Broadway and at Grand Street. Those are the two principal entrances, or the only exterior entrances, and those canopies will be marking those entrances. A yellow illuminated strip going into the windows will show you details, but that's in the area bounded by the yellow dotted line. Red vinyl signage on the entry doors that exceeds LPC limits for staff level approval. Wire mesh backing for the main fascia signs, which will be installed vertically instead of at an angle as indicated in the approved master plan, and then a banner at the corner of Broadway and Grand hanging from an existing flagpole. This shows the proposed bank plan with the principal entrance on Broadway on your left and the handicapped entrance on Grand Street at the lower right-hand corner. These details are the areas where we're going to be adding entrance canopy on Grand Street. This shows the context of the whole elevation where we'll be removing a window and installing a door as indicated in the approved master plan. And then this shows, again, in the context of the entire elevation, the graphic corporate signage that we are proposing to install. Looking at it in greater detail, this is the area where the Grand Street handicapped entrance will be, and this slide shows you what we're doing. You see that with the red canopy over the door, that's a rectangular 3 by 8 inch channel. It's open, it's not closed top, and it projects about 3'8" out from the wood towards the street. You see the red vinyl strip on the right-hand door. That exceeds the staff permitted dimensions for graphics in a single light, but if you consider the two lights together, it does comply, but nonetheless, we're here looking for permission. And then you see the yellow illuminated stripe around the windows, which we will explain in detail later in this presentation. This is the Broadway corner of the Grand Street elevation. You see the fascia sign on the wire mesh and the flag hanging from the existing flagpole. This is the on Broadway. This is the area where we'll be taking the existing door and installing the graphic improvements. You see the again in elevation, and then here is the Broadway signage in the context of the full elevation. Here is a more detailed photograph of the door that we're talking about on Broadway. And then here is the drawing showing the full scope of the Broadway graphic program, including the Wells Fargo sign at the cornice on the wire mesh, the yellow illuminated strip around the windows, the projecting open canopy in red, and the red vinyl stripe going down the right-hand door. This slide shows details of the, on the right, the projecting canopy. It projects 3'6", actually, my mistake. It's just an open channel that is painted red. There are about 40 bays in this building, and these two projecting canopies are intended to identify the bays that you have to go into to get to the bank. And then on the left, you see details of the welcoming sign that would be in vinyl and applied to the interior of the right-hand door. This slide shows details of the illuminated yellow stripe. It's a C channel with LED lights within it, and then a transparent or translucent yellow vinyl fabric over it. This element is 2.5 inches wide as it goes across the in a vertical direction, and then it's 4.5 inches wide as it comes down at the ends of the demised property, and it's set back approximately 9/16 of an inch from the face of the glass. This shows the sign for Wells Fargo being mounted to the cornice, and this is something that giving us a great deal of trouble. The original historic photographs show that all of the stores had signs attached right to the fascia with vertical signage, and the approved master plan calls for a situation with this wire mesh, but pulled back at the bottom so that it would be at an angle, sort of facing down toward the sidewalk and the street. Our client is very much interested in having their sign in a purely vertical orientation, that is to say, straight up and down. And this is the only way we figured out how to be able to mount the sign in that way and attach it to the non-historic portions of the cornice. Remember that the upper part of that cornice had been damaged and in some earlier 20th century alterations. So this is new cast iron that we're attaching into. The letters themselves are just 12 inches high. This is the typical Wells Fargo sort of graphic program applied to us of a typical suburban installation. I'm sure you can't wait to have it come to Soho. What we have done is to try to modify this to be more appropriate to the context of the cast iron historic district. And this slide, the last slide, shows the whole signage program in place when the bank is occupying it. That is my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions, Chairman.
So my thing isn't here, so I can't. So,
Okay. So commissioners, do we have any questions at this time?
no.
Okay. So not seeing any hands raised, I think we'll move right to testimony, and we may have more questions after that. So if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your hand so we can identify you, and I'll turn it over to Lisa now. Lisa.
Okay. Had 2 people sign up to speak and 2 people with their hand raised. Start with Pete Davies, followed by Kelly Carroll. So Pete, you just need to unmute yourself, turn on your camera if you choose, and state your name for the record. Okay, trying that again. Pete, I've been trying to promote you as a panelist. I think you have to accept that. Okay, I'm gonna, oh, did that work? No, I'm gonna start with Kelly Carroll. Let's bring her in as a panelist. And Pete, if you come back, we can have you speak. Okay, Kelly, you should be good to go.
Okay, Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. There is ample precedent in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District for signage treatment that does not obscure ironwork for which the district was designated. The corner cornices should be exposed, not hidden behind signage. Part of the issue is that the examples provided of this bank's prototype are suburban, a formula which is emphatically uncharacteristic of Soho. The ample presence of windows should provide more than enough space for this bank's branding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. And Pete, I see you now. If you could just unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose. Pete, you just have to I'll try and get you started to unmute yourself. There you go. There you go.
There we go. Sorry, I got thrown out of the room when you promoted me to panelist. So thank you very much for your time. My name is Pete Davies, Broadway Residents Coalition, 40-year resident of Broadway and Soho. 462 Broadway is a magnificent building, and it should be seen in all the glory of the recent meticulous restoration that's been brought to it, rather than allowing the structure to be obscured. I support the objections from CB2, and we all appreciate very much the changes that the applicant has made since they came to CB2. Regarding the building as a whole, I note that architect Sam White stated in an article, the building itself dominates the public realm. It engages you at street level. And I ask you to note that the current branch of Wells Fargo across the street in the Jean Nouvel building has branded itself in a very subtle down key way. First, if the exterior ATM installations have been removed, we thank you for that. So I will move on. The items that I'd like to bring your attention to first, the yellow strip lighting, we adamantly oppose this. Perimeter lighting is not permitted in the district, and this should not be allowed. We ask that you reject that. The red canopies, we ask that those be done in a color more in keeping with the colors that were approved in the master plan. The pin lettering is much improved over what was previously opposed, but I do have a big issue with the screen. The fascia sign detail noted in the master plan is mesh support panels. If you could look at pages 19 and 25, you will see that there's this really great sawtooth detail in the cast iron. And the way that screen is now presented, it obscures that. It's right at the bottom of where the screen is. When Sharita Paulson presented this to CB2, the master plan 5 years ago, we asked, when eventually will that sawtooth be revealed? And she said, absolutely, we will not obscure that. And if you see here in the renderings, it totally obscures that sawtooth detail at the bottom of the screen. And the screens are too wide. They take up a whole thing. If those could be minimized, that would be great. Finally, a question about the flag. Flag poles are mentioned in the master plan, but flags are not. No flags were brought to the community board. So we're not clear what the flags are. Again, I just take you back to Mr. Smith's comment that the building itself is the story here, and the less obscuring, the less branding that's screaming at you, the better. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yes, we have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 2 recommending denial, and there were 5 other letters in opposition from neighbors.
Okay. All right. So Sam, would you like to address some of those comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I see that I'm changing my name from White to Smith, and the next stop is the Federal Witness Relocation Program. The cornice is mesh. If you look at this photograph, you look to the far left, that is the existing approved mesh covering to support the letters. We couldn't replicate that in Photoshop, and so what we have shown you looks a lot more opaque than what we would be proposing. So look at the far left of that photograph, and you'll see what the mesh looks like. We could shorten the amount of mesh. We had selected it to line up, I think, with what was existing originally, and if the length of mesh was an issue, we can certainly managed to shorten that. The lighting, the yellow lighting, I'm well aware that there is no precedent for that, that this is the bank standard and they are hoping to get this approved. But if it's not approvable, we would ask that you consider other ways of sort of replicating that kind of graphic identity. Otherwise, Community Board 2 is correct. We originally came to the Community Board with exterior ATMs, and we have removed them from the application.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? All right, so I'm not seeing any questions. We're going to move to close the hearing, and I am now unmuting you. And again, in some cases, you'll get a request to unmute. Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion, and just working around, I think we'll start with Commissioner Goldblum. Would you take this one?
Sure. I do think it's a bit much, and I think it can be clipped back a little bit to make it appropriate. Starting from the top, I think the mesh should follow the approved line, the angle. Letters can be vertical if they're offset on ends off of the mesh, but I think that the mesh should be continuous in its angle. I think that the extent of the mesh should be limited to a small area beyond the letters to either side. I think that the width of it is excessive, especially on the Broadway side where it kind of doesn't go the whole bay. It kind of looks halfway. I think that the yellow is okay as an applied graphic, but as a light fixture, I think it's inappropriate. I'd say either the light fixture should be, I think the light fixture should be eliminated. I think the yellow graphic as such is all right as long as it's not illuminated. I think that the red canopy on Broadway is acceptable because it identifies the entrance and it makes sense. But I think that on the side street, it's not appropriate and the canopy should be removed. I think the flag is okay.
Address the flag, Corey. The flagpole itself is approved or there prior to designation, correct? So
it's a commission approved flagpole that actually existed before the master plan was established, but has still been used since then.
So the commission allows people to hang from approved or legal poles that are existing. Okay, Commissioner Devonshire?
I agree with every point that Commissioner Goldblum made.
Okay, Commissioner Chen?
I think he's away, right?
Gone, sorry. Commissioner Bland, yeah.
Right. I think I'm also in agreement, except I don't have a problem with the Grand Street red canopy.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi? Is she gone? She's no,
she was muted.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. You know, I just feel like I can appreciate. I want to thank the applicant for trying to make this work in a very suburban setting. It's exactly the opposite. But I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said. I just feel like no lighting, no canopy on the side. But I still feel like they could do a little more thinking to make this fit better on this beautiful historic structure. I mean, sometimes in an environment like this, you just have to think out of the box, and it might not perfectly fit your graphic standards. And I think it needs a little more work.
Jefferson.
I agree with my fellow commissioners, but I think there's a way of making Wells Fargo work really well. Perhaps if you could go back to the section, the detail that you show. You see, if you didn't have the cornice piece, if you lower the mesh maybe a couple of inches to fit into the void, it could be because the cornice is so beautiful and you're covering it up, that if you dropped it down, it would fit in perfectly, and you see that beautiful line of the cornice going across. That's a suggestion.
And Commissioner, let me just see, Gustafson?
I agree completely with Commissioner Goldblum's comments.
Okay, Commissioner Shamir Barron?
I can support the yellow and the red graphics, whether in painted form or in light form, because they are behind this sort of unrelenting, beautiful white structure. I can also support because there are flagpoles there, the assumption is that there would be a flag. And so I think that a flag is perfectly acceptable, and I think it could even be bigger, and I typically do. But I could not support anything that covers the cornice, the mesh, the letters, any of it. And I just want to note that I have seen, and I'm sure others have as well, they may here want for the letters, the words Wells Fargo to be horizontal and continuous, but I've seen many Wells Fargo facades, storefronts where Wells is above Fargo, in which case that thing, it does, in other words, not turned on its side, but it's Wells above Fargo, could happen inside of the store front windows. And I wouldn't have a problem even if they were illuminated. So I'm absolutely opposed, though, to anything, mesh or otherwise, that covers the cornice.
Okay, and so Corey, just clarify for me, the master plan allows the staff to approve a mesh sign over the cornice at an angle. And does it prescribe location or number?
I actually would have to defer to Holly or Edith on that, but it is true that it already sort of pre-approved the angled nature of the mesh. You know, it is supposed to be a transparent mesh, so you can still see through some of the details, but otherwise it follows the profile. But I'm not exactly sure about quantity.
I don't believe the quantity is specified in the master plan.
If I can just add, it does provide detail on the size of the mesh, though. So it's centered over one bay and goes over half of the adjacent bays. Okay. So it is much shorter in length.
Much shorter in length. So along the lines of what Commissioner Goldblum was suggesting as well.
Correct.
Okay. And Commissioner Holford Smith? Oh, sorry, she's recused. And Commissioner Chapin.
Yes, I basically agree with Commissioner Goldblum's comments and many of the other commissioners. First, I agree that they should not have lighting around the windows. The use of yellow and red as their trademark is acceptable. The cornice should not be obscured. And I think there are ways to, by reducing the mesh and different way of perhaps suspending the letters from the mesh, that could achieve, the visibility of their logo without obscuring the cornice, which is extremely important. I thought at first that the canopy stuck out too far, because it looks like they stick out beyond the pillars. But I think that may be just something about the rendering, because they're only about 3 feet 6, I think, the canopies, and that doesn't seem too big. As far as whether there's one or two canopies, I think that the applicant suggested that both places were going to be an entrance for whatever reason. And if they are entrances, I think that's appropriate. If one of them is not an entrance, then I don't see why it's necessary. But if they're both being used as entrances, I don't have a problem with both canopies.
All right. Again, Holly or Edith, can you just confirm for us whether the Grand Street entrance is an entrance, an actual entrance?
I believe it was described as the barrier-free access entrance will be on Grand Street because there are steps on the interior at Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's Mark here. And it looks like both of those could be considered primary entrances. You know, they're both on major streets, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. So, so then I think, Diana, you'd be fine with two canopies. And so I think, you know, many commissioners agreed with the suggestions that Commissioner Goldblum set out at the beginning, except there's this question about this second canopy. So I just want to go back to Commissioner Goldblum and those who agreed with him on the canopy. Knowing that it is another primary entrance, do you still feel the same about its presence there, or that it shouldn't be there?
I personally do. I think that I think the red does the job there. I think that the placement in the building, at least as far as I can tell from the presentation, just looks to me to be less, I don't know. It seems more intrusive into the architecture of the building in one's reading of that long facade. So I would not feel that that changed my opinion.
Okay, so here's what I think. I think we have a lot of similar thoughts, but there are slight differences in them, which I'm in sort of looking through my notes, I'm having a hard time trying to get to 6 on one particular package. So what I'm going to suggest is that we don't take an action today. And I think with just some refinements, we can bring the applicant back quickly. And so I think for the mesh signs, I think that the commissioners have expressed concern about the size and angle of it, and that the mesh should be reduced in width, more along the lines of the master plan, angled. Perhaps then the freestanding letters might be okay, but reducing the mesh and angling it in conformance with the master plan. And then, you know, with the yellow, I think most people felt that there shouldn't be lighting, there could be some graphic, and that there's a sort of mixed opinion on those canopies, but maybe with some comprehensive look at the yellow and red, maybe there is an option for 2 canopies if other aspects of the red and the yellow are restudied. So I think that may be a way to think about this and we'll bring you back quickly, but I think right now we don't have enough votes for it all. And so while we do have some support for different aspects of it. So I think maybe rethinking the sort of the red and the yellow at the base comprehensively will give us a package that we can come back and have 6 votes for. And we'll do that as quickly as you can.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to item number 8. This is LPC 20-07755, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 607, Lot 56, 121 West 11th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. A Greek Revival style row house with later alterations designed by William Hurry and built in 1841 to 42. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions and replace windows.
Okay, commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the presentation and state your name for the record. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Jackie Puduvallin. I'm the preservation consultant on the project. Good to see you all again. I'm sorry, do I have control of the presentation or does the architect?
You do.
Do I?
You can
Okay.
click on the screen and then you can advance. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, wait, how do I go back? I'm sorry. Okay. All right, thank you. Again, my name is Jackie Puduvallin, preservation consultant. I'm here today with Raul Medeiros of Imagine Architecture. Thank you for hearing our application today. This project is 121 West 11th Street, an 1840s Greek Revival row house that stands on the north side of the street between 6th and 7th Avenues in the Greenwich Village Historic District. The proposed work includes installing 1/1 wood windows at the front facade, constructing a modest rooftop addition with a railing and mechanical equipment on top of it, constructing a rear addition, and excavation at the rear yard. There will also be associated restorative work, which will be handled at staff level. Here are photos of the house in the 1930s and a designation in 1969. 121 was built as part of a row with the houses to the right in the designation photo. Originally, that row extended from this house and all the way east to 6th Avenue. The north side of the street is characterized by brick facade row houses of the same period as this one, excuse me, a few of which had very large and visible rooftop additions constructed prior to designation. To the right of 121 are some of the other houses in its row, and across the street is a 20th century school complex. In the 1890s, the house underwent significant alterations. The roof was raised so that the top of its facade is now taller, where you see the mouse moving, is now taller than that of the cornice lines of the adjacent row houses. A pressed metal bracketed cornice was installed consistent with that period at the end of the 19th century. Likewise, profiled projecting lintels were installed, replacing the flat lintels of its original Greek Revival design. 1/1 windows were installed, replacing the original multi-light windows of the early 19th century. A pair of glazed doors were installed in front of the still extant wood panel doors, and very elaborate curving iron railings were installed at the stoop and areaway. Today, we are proposing 1/1 wood windows as the new windows at this facade, which we believe are in keeping with this condition, the condition that is the significant later alteration from the 19th century. Here are the existing 1/1 double hung wood windows in detailed photographs. And here are detailed drawings showing you the proposed windows. The existing brick molds will be refurbished and retained. Here are the existing and proposed front elevations in which you can see the proposed rooftop addition. The addition's proposed height is 9'4". It will have on top of it a generator and kitchen exhaust vent and a 3-foot tall cable railing set into a 6-inch tall curb. Please note that even with the generator, exhaust vent, and thin railing on top, the addition will still be shorter than the existing rooftop addition that's on the top of 123 West 11th Street. Here are photos taken from the roof. In the bottom right photo is the 2-story addition at number 123, which the proposed addition will be built next to. Here are the existing and proposed roof plans. The proposed addition will be set back over 16 feet from the front facade. A mechanical unit is proposed to stand in front of it at the south end of the roof. At the rear, north end of the roof, a terrace is proposed. A 72-inch tall fence is proposed to separate the front and rear portions of the roof. On the proposed penthouse roof, you can see the proposed generator and a kitchen exhaust and thin perimeter cable railing. This roof would be accessed by a ladder attached to the addition. The reason the generator is proposed to be placed on top of the addition's roof is because it requires a 5-foot clearance on all sides because it vents carbon monoxide. This means that if the generator were placed in the rear yard, it would require a minimum 13 foot by 17 foot clear area. The kitchen exhaust likewise also vents carbon monoxide, so therefore it's also being placed on this roof. Here are some sections showing you the existing rooftop and the proposed. One section is taken through the addition and one section is taken through the flat terrace area to the east. Here you can see that the height to the roof of the addition will be 9 foot 4 inches. There's again a 6 inch high perimeter curb necessary to flash and waterproof the addition's roof, and then a 3 foot tall thin cable railing. Here are photos of the mock-up taken from the roof. On the photo in the bottom right corner, you can see how this addition will abut the 2-story addition next door. Also note the envelope of the occupiable space and the railing have been outlined in darker orange in this bottom right corner. I ask you to keep this image in mind when you're looking at the mock-up visibility photos on the following pages, because in those photos, it's this top portion, the area of the railing, that is somewhat visible from the street. Here are panorama photos of the mock-up taken from the roof. In this rendering, you can see the proposed addition, the materials for the work at the roof. Here is that thin cable railing I mentioned a moment ago, which is the portion of the addition that becomes visible from the street. Here are the mock-up visibility photos, which were taken in March before there were leaves on the trees. These photos were taken from across the street and from the west and east on 11th Street. The mock-up is visible from the east, as you can see here. That's the regular view, and then this is the zoomed in view. So it's visible from the east, but it is seen in context with this very large addition beyond it, which you can see here. And also to emphasize, looking at this photograph, there's no portion of this work at the roof that's visible from looking at the front facade of the building. What you're seeing popping up beyond the building is the top of a property behind it and a railing that's on the top of 130 West 12th Street. So again, the mock-up is not visible when looking straight on at the building. Okay, so now let's see. Here are additional photos of the mock-up as one travels east on 11th Street. Towards 6th Avenue, the architect has included a rendering based on the middle zoomed in photo showing that the portion of the addition that's visible over the party wall will be minimal, and most of what you'll be seeing is the railing and piece of the exhaust duct seen here. Okay. Here is the existing building section. You can see the adjacent rooftop and rear additions of the house at number 123, rooftop addition, their rear addition. This is the proposed building section. Here you can see the proposed rooftop addition and the rear addition, which will extend 4 feet past the line of the existing wall. The rooftop, again, the rooftop addition is not visible when viewed from across the street. You don't see it over the cornice. Here are the lines of sight as viewed from 2 points across the street to the east. And here are the lines of sight as viewed from 2 points across the street to the west. And here's an axonometric view that shows you the massing of the proposed rear addition as well as the work at the roof. Here's the existing rear facade of 121 West 11th Street. In the center photo, you can also see in the left photo, which are houses of the same row, the left photo, which are houses of the same row, that the rears of those houses have also been added to over time, and that the rear of 121 already projects past the plane of the other houses in its row, which is also a later alteration. These are massing studies that are taken from historic maps, showing how the rears of 121 and some of the other houses in its row have changed over time. 121 and the adjacent houses in the row originally had wood T-porches. By 1916, 121's T-porch was replaced with a masonry addition. This is the proposed block plan, which shows that the houses to the right, which are part of this house's row, have also been added to over time with 2-story rear additions. It also shows that many houses nearby have 1- and 2-story rooftop additions. This is the existing and proposed rear elevation. The proposed rear addition will have a double height glazed opening, which with an articulated transom at its center to recall the original floor plate location beyond. These are window details for that steel window assembly. And here is the existing rear yard and proposed, existing and proposed plans. The hardscape patio will remain, as well as planting bed toward the rear. And here are those plans again enlarged. Here's the existing and proposed rear yard sections. Note that a portion of the rear yard will be lowered by about 1 foot. Here are just the proposed rear yard sections. Again, the hatched areas indicate where real brick is being used on the sides of the additions. And here are the existing and proposed rear yard plans, color-coded to help identify the grade elevations at this yard and the neighboring yards. And this is a rendering to show you the proposed materials at the rear addition and at the rear yard. The return walls at the addition, again, will be real brick. The cladding at the rear of the addition is proposed to be a simulated wood siding. And again, here you can see how the transom windows recall the location of the original floor plate. Here are the proposed front and rear elevations again, just to recap the proposal. And we're happy to take your questions and comments.
First, do we have any questions? All right, not seeing any hands raised. I think we'll move to public testimony. And if you're here to testify on this item, please raise your hand. And Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, we had one person sign up. That's Louisa Wenchell, so I'm going to bring you in.
Hello, my name is Louisa Wenchell and I represent Village Preservation. Village Preservation feels that there are some relatively simple adjustments that can be made to this proposal to make it more appropriate for this early 1840s Greek Revival row house. First, the mechanicals and rail on top of the penthouse do not need to be located there. They are far too visible from the street and there is ample room on the roof for the mechanicals instead, thus making them non-visible and no longer requiring the visible rail. Secondly, the proposed rear addition, while modest in its depth, includes a massive expanse of glass both vertically and horizontally, which is out of place on the rear of a modest row house. We feel that it would be more appropriate if this large expanse of glass included divisions which made reference to the building's historic fenestration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody else that is their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yeah, we do have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 2 with several recommendations. The first of which is the approval of the front facade windows, approval of the penthouse room, denial of the generator and fence or any other structure on the roof of the penthouse room, approval of the rear extension, excavation, and reconfiguring of the garden, and denial of the rear yard, of the rear facade, basement, and parlor windows.
So the double height glazing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Jackie, would you like to address some of those comments?
Yes, please. First off, thank you to Village Preservation for their thoughtful comments. Personally, the design team for this project is really not concerned with the view, what we see as being a very minimal view of the rooftop work that can be seen from the street. It's seen from an angle, it's seen against a neighboring very large addition. It's seen only when there's leaves on the trees, and what you're actually seeing from the street is just the thinnest possible cable rail that would meet code and a small corner of a kitchen vent. So I understand that Village Preservation wants to keep rooftops as clean or as pristine in the streets and this roofscape as possible. But I think it's really just the typical rooftop accretions that you see. And again, it's, I think, things that would be hardly noticeable. What else do I want to say on that? As regard to the rear yard addition, again, the design team thinks that the way the transom is expressed does recall that floor plate between the basement and first floor. So they're approaching this as a more modernist view of how to express interior structure on one of these houses. Let's see, that's it. Same thing for addressing CB2's comments. Again, I think that the cable railing and the portion of the vent that you can see from the street is rather minimal. And if those two things, if the generator and the vent were placed in the rear yard, it would, I think, not be ideal. I don't think you should have things that are venting carbon monoxide put in your backyard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, so I think we'll move to close our hearing and begin our discussion. So Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that?
Second.
Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And we're looking at the proposed 1/1 windows on the front top addition and the rear yard addition, because the staff can't approve both at the same time. And then the visibility of the railings and the expression on the rear yard addition is also outside of the scope of the rules for staff level approval. So Commissioner Devonshire, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I'm actually pretty much okay with everything that they're showing. I think that there should be a solid spandrel separating the upper and lower portions of that rear window. I think in the past we've always called for something like that. That monumental window is just a little bit too much. Other than that, I think it's okay.
Okay, great. Commissioner Bland.
I'm the same way. Just put the spandrel in and everything else is okay.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi.
Wait,
you're mute.
I agree.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
I agree.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Agreed.
Commissioner Shamir Baran.
I can support this. Thank you.
Holford Smith.
I agree. The spandrel, adding spandrel.
Great. And Commissioner Chapin.
Yes, I agree, and include the spandrel.
Goldblum.
Ditto. I do note that we have approved recently some projects where they use, I think, metal for the spandrel.
Yes, we have. We have. Yeah. So I think the material could be metal that sort of is composed and integrated in with the window assembly, or it could be masonry. Perhaps they can work with the staff on that. Okay, Commissioner, I think we have a consensus, and Commissioner Devonshire, would you make that motion?
Sure. Sorry. In the matter of LPC 20-07755, 121 West 11th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District, an application to construct a rooftop and rear yard addition and replace windows. I recommend approval with a modification finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features of the building, that this mid-19th century row house has had significant alterations throughout its history, including raising the top floor, installing an Italian style cornice, and installing 1/1 windows. Therefore, the proposed 1/1 double hung wood windows with a dark finish will be consistent with changes that have occurred to this building over time. that the proposed rooftop addition and railings will not be visible over the primary facade and will only be minimally visible from limited oblique angles on West 11th Street against the backdrop of tall buildings and rooftop additions. Therefore, it will not detract from the building or the adjacent historic buildings. That this building is surrounded by large buildings and other rear yard incursions, and therefore the presence of the proposed rear yard addition will not diminish the central green space. The proposed rear yard addition, featuring a double height steel and glass window and door assembly, will be of a modest height and depth and will not be visible from the public thoroughfare. That there are a variety of building materials present on this block, including wood, stucco, and brick, and the use of high quality dark colored wood composite cladding material for both the rooftop and rear addition will reference these traditional materials in a contemporary way. And that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural character or historic character of the building or the Greenwich Village Historic District. However, the configuration of the double height window at the rear yard does not adequately express the location of the original first floor, and the applicant will work with staff to change the configuration of the rear window to include a solid spandrel or other horizontal element marking the location of the missing first floor.
Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
And Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen is no longer here. Commissioner Devonshire, Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 10 in favor and unopposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you.
Go to the next item.
Right, the next item is number 9, LPC 20-06474, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 620, Lot 1, 247 West 10th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. An apartment building designed by Samuel Roth and built in 1947. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows.
Commissioners, the applicant has joined the hearing. Staff will be presenting this application, and the applicants are available for questions. So staff, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Abby Hurlbut, Preservation Staff. This application is to establish a building-wide windows master plan on all facades at 247 West 10th Street, located on the northeast corner of West 10th Street and Hudson Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. As you can see here, I go to the next page. There we go. The building was built shortly after the 1940s tax photos were taken. So the building featured historic steel multi-light casement windows with a dark finish and were present at the time of designation, as you can see here in the designation photo, excuse me. So in 1987, the commission issued a certificate of appropriateness approving the building-wide replacement of these original casement windows with black finished multi-light double hung windows, as you can see here and here. So as I mentioned, the proposal is to establish a building-wide master plan to replace these modern black finished multi-light double hung windows with a black finished 1/1 double hung window. And so here are the existing elevations to show you the existing, and here's the proposed. I'm just going to take you through really quickly and we'll come right back. These are just photos of the neighboring buildings to show you some context, and the applicant team will discuss that shortly. And finally, these are the proposed sections for the 1/1 windows. Now with that, the applicant is here to discuss the appropriateness of this proposal. So Agnes, you may start.
Okay, hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi. So actually we would like to put your attention that there are a couple of reasons why we would think we got interested in this project, because proposing this 1/1 windows was really long time on the mind of the owner. And since he's very engaged in maintaining the facade, he is going through a couple of renovation recently. He is also making the facade restoration, renovation. He started also coming back to the idea from the prior years to replace the windows from the let's say original configuration to the more modern configuration 1/1, which is very typical in this area. And since the building is from 1947, how it was mentioned, the 1/1 configuration, 1/1 solution of the windows wasn't really rare at this point of time. It was really widely used. So we came back together with the owner to this proposal, and we prepared our presentation. So most importantly, we would really like to put your attention to the fact that historically, this 1/1 configuration is not rare. As you see in the neighborhood, there are many examples. We just mentioned a couple of the buildings which are already having this type of solution. So historically, we think that they are appropriate for this building. And also going, with the advancement of the time, the double hang windows, they have many technological advantages as well, because right now casement windows wouldn't be giving the possibility to, for example, give the tenants and people who live there the possibility to have the air conditionings in these buildings, and the double hang windows give you the possibility to have the better living comfort for the tenants. And this is why we thought that additionally to all the energy efficiency factors which these windows would have, they are really going to create a better environment, better solution for the tenants and for the neighborhood. Well, last but not least, of course, we would like to mention the aesthetical reason of our proposal, because the current solution, current configuration of the windows, it's 4/4 applied mullions, meaning this 4/4 are not really the, let's say, true mullions. They are kind of artificially created mullions, which really don't add too much of the, let's say, true historical effect value to the building. This is why we would like to also come back to the simple solution, which was widely spread during 1940s, which were the 1/1 double hang.
Thank you. And just for our record, can you just state your name?
My name is Agnes, and this is Chris, the architect. We are here together to present it.
We are
partners. We are partners.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps we could go back to your photo slide where you have the tax photo, current photos. So commissioners, do we have any questions? This was a building that looks like it was built in the 19th century, and then in the 1947, it looks like it was redesigned or replaced with this more Art Deco style facade. And the commission previously approved multi-light or 4x4 double, 2x2 double hung windows. Are there any questions? Okay, let's see if there's any public testimony and then see if we have any questions after that. Oh wait, Commissioner Chapin, please go ahead. Diana, did you have a question?
Yes. When was it redesigned? Do we think? Do we have a sense of that?
I believe our report says 1947.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's see if we have any public testimony. If you're here to speak on this item, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa now.
Okay, great. We had two people sign up, Kelly Carroll and Louisa Wenchell. We're going to bring in Kelly first. So you just make sure to state your name for the record.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. The designation photo of 247 West 10th Street with its steel casement windows is all the argument one needs to make for the case for why this fenestration should be restored. Its austere, late 40s facade calls for a window treatment of its era. 1/1 windows would relegate this building's appearance and should not be approved. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Louisa, just brought you in.
Hello, my name is Louisa Wenchell and I represent Village Preservation. In looking at the designation photo, we see that this 1947 apartment building had multi-paned casement windows, which were subsequently replaced with 4/4 double hung windows. Losing the texture to the facade that multi-paned windows provide in an otherwise austere facade would not do service to the building or the streetscape. Therefore, Village Preservation asks that the Commission require that the applicant maintain either the 4/4 window pattern or reinstate the original pattern of the windows seen in the casement windows shown in the designation photo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that's everybody, I believe, for testimony.
Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
We do have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 2 recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'm going to turn to Agnes to see if you would like to respond to any of the comments that we've just heard. Agnes and Chris. Are they still here?
Agnes and Chris, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. We understand that probably there will be some resistance from a certain representatives of the neighborhood, but from the other point, there is also the time factor that we are going toward the, a little bit different, let's say, solutions, more, let's say, comfortable for the living in the building people. And we would really like to keep the original, let's say, configuration, but time proves a little bit otherwise. For example, the casement windows, we will not provide the possibility, the solution to, for example, place the air conditioning in this window. And it's really the time proves that as much as we want to keep certain historical solutions, so historical images, time unfortunately must go on. The technology and people living around need some more additional comfort, additional, let's say, additional living needs. They have additional living needs, and this is why we think that with all respect, with all understanding, we would really see the, let's say, voice of the owner who comes back to this idea, who wants to provide the tenants with the new possibility.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Okay, so I think we'll move to our discussion, and I'm requesting to unmute you, or I'm going ahead and unmuting you at this point. So look at your screens. And Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
I second it.
Okay. All right. So we'll now vote on closing the hearing. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed, and we're going to start our discussion, and I think we've made it all the way around the table. So Commissioner Bland, would you like to take this one?
Right, the subject I like least, windows. I find it to be difficult for me for some reason. Could we have a picture of what's being proposed instead of the text up there? I mean, not this, but picture of the building. Yeah. See, I can't just become a visualist on this, at least in a building like this. There are too many functional issues involved, including weather tightness, including air conditioning, these sorts of things. In a few cases, I think the building is so significant that without the original window, often multi-pane windows, it's hard to justify a change. But in a building like this, which has been altered a lot over time and is a nice building, but it's not a highly significant building, I really find it difficult to force on an applicant windows which won't allow easily, at least allow air conditioning and allow a lot of leakage. So I'm going to probably be a minority, but I will suggest that what is being proposed is okay. I think a 1/1 double hung window is so standard that our eyes just accept it as a fait accompli in so many cases. I think the 4/4, not to throw our former commission under the rug, but I think that was probably not the right thing to do. So I think a 1/1 is okay.
And
that's the danger of going first.
And I want to also note for the record that Commissioner Lutfi has left for the day. So Commissioner Jefferson, what are your thoughts? You're muted. Commissioner Jefferson? Okay. I'm not sure if he's actually present.
Sorry, your mic wasn't working there.
Mine wasn't?
Yeah,
I
couldn't hear you.
Sorry. All right, Commissioner Jefferson, do you have would you like to state an opinion on the proposal, which is a 1/1 window? We can't hear you. Okay.
Commissioner Jefferson, your microphone may not be working. You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
So I'll go around and then we'll come back to him as they figure out the technical problems. Okay, Commissioner Gustafson.
I see what Commissioner Bland is saying, but I go the opposite way, which is to say, this is a building that really doesn't have much character left in it once you take the multi-light windows away. I would not advocate going back to casements, but a multi-light. I guess I think they approved previously a 4/4, which is kind of a very odd looking layout. but something that's more of a, I would even take a 6/1 just to get the, so it allows for the air conditioning, the same as the 1/1, and it puts some character back in the building without actually forcing them to go back to multi-light casements that might have other issues, but it would give us the look that we might want.
Okay. All right. And Commissioner Shamir Barron?
I'm afraid I have to defend multi-light casement in this case. And it's my favorite subject, but it's a complicating situation that this is not an individual landmark, it's in a district. I understand that. I don't know how it is that these particular kinds of buildings, though, in the 40s that we rarely identify as individual landmarks ever get sustained in the way that they were designed, other than this way. So I am going to stick to the multi-light casement. Thank you.
Commissioner Holford Smith?
Sarah, can I just interject one second? So commissioners, just so we understand what's before you, the choice is not really between a 1/1 and going back to the casement. The commission previously approved 1/1 double hung with this 4/4. So in terms of the operation, the commission has already found that is appropriate. And now the question before you right now is whether it should be the 4/4 or they want a 1/1. So the choice is not technically really between a casement or this. It's really between what was previously approved and this, and their proposal.
Is that quite right, Mark? Isn't it really a choice between accepting or denying what they've proposed?
Yes, but I'm saying is if
and then they can come back to us with something else if they want to, which could be the casements, could be 6/1, could be 4/4.
Right, but the commission,
they leave it the way it is. They leave it the way it is.
Yeah, they could leave it the way it is. That's right. That's right. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that having approved this once, the commission would need to figure out, say why this is inappropriate. Having found it appropriate once, we would have to find why it's inappropriate to continue doing. Okay.
The double hung, right? With the double hung operation.
Yeah, the double hung operation,
which we're entitled to.
Yeah, we have to have a reason. That's right.
That's right. And so, but it's the proposal is 1/1 double hung windows. And if we do not approve that, they can keep what they have, or they can propose something different along the lines of things that come up in this discussion if they choose to, but they don't have to. Okay. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Well, with that in mind, I also believe that a building of this style needs the multi-light window. It was part of its defining characteristic. So I don't really think that the 4/4 was maybe the right choice, but since that was approved in the past, I think they could do that. Or if they would like to come back with something that, like what John suggested, maybe a 6/1 for us to look at. But I do think that this building needs the granular detail of the multi-light window.
Commissioner Chapin?
I agree in this particular case that it really needs a multi-light, and without it, it really doesn't have very much character. However, I would say that, on the non-primary facades, they could have, just an ordinary 1/1. So they might want to propose a combination is what I'm thinking of,
Okay. And Commissioner Goldblum.
As a window stalwart, I don't normally have qualms about saying that they should go back to the original window, but given the proportion of these windows, if you look at the typical casement replacement that we allow in situations to accommodate air conditioners, they're usually taller. they have like a fixed light on the bottom, and then above the fixed light, you'd have a casement. And that works very well in Central Park West buildings, on Fifth Avenue buildings, on other buildings where you see a lot of the steel casements. The arguments about energy efficiency of a double hung window, totally bogus. The technological argument, totally bogus. It's really, like everyone is saying, the aesthetics of the building are properly done with, I mean, they made a conscious change when they renovated the building in the 1940s or 30s to update the windows, quote unquote, to a more modern, quote unquote, casement. So by historic preservation lights, these should be casement windows. I would accept the 4/4 existing ones because they most similarly match the rhythm and quantity of panes of the casements. I don't think there's a functional way to get casements here and allow air conditioning without puncturing the walls, which would be worse. So I would be okay with the double hung 4/4s. I think 6/1s would be inappropriate from a stylistic point of view.
Okay, but the proposal is the 1/1, and so you're not comfortable with that?
No.
Okay. All right, and Commissioner Devonshire.
My vote is to deny the application for 1/1.
Okay. All right. So I think what's clear is that while we have one supporter for the 1/1, that in this case, the consensus is not to support not to approve 1/1 at this building. And so I think we'll make a motion to deny that. The applicant can continue to do the 4/4 paired configuration that was approved by the commission, or choose to come back to us with a different proposal. So let me see. Commissioner Gustafson, would you make that motion?
Okay. Give me a second. All right, in the matter of docket number LPC 20-06474-247 West 10th Street, Greenwich Village Historic District, the application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows. I note that the building scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I also note that all of the historic multi-light casement windows are replaced with multi-light double hung windows pursuant to Certificate of Appropriateness 97-5741 issued on May 29, 1997, and that a proposal for the installation of 1/1 double hung windows was denied by the Commission in 1989 under Commission Denial 90-0036. I recommend denial, finding that the proposed 1/1 windows will not match the historic windows in terms of configuration, operation, or details, nor will they be consistent with the multi-light treatment previously approved by the commission, that the building is simple in design and derived much of its character from its multi-light casement windows. Therefore, the 1/1 windows will detract from the building. And that the cumulative effect of the implementation of this master plan will diminish the special architectural and historic character of the building in perpetuity.
And Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Nay.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 8 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, so that application is denied, and the applicants can continue to talk to the staff about options here. Okay, we'll go to the next item.
Next item is number 10, LPC 21-00233, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 612, Lot 2, 257 West 4th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. An Italianate style row house designed by Robert Mook and built in 1870 to 71. The application is to construct a rear yard addition and extend chimney flues at the roof.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Staff will be presenting this application and the applicants are available for questions. So just give you control of the presentation and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Julianne Wiesner-Chianese, Preservation Staff. 257 West 4th Street is located on the east side of West 4th Street in the middle of the block between Charles Street and Perry Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. The proposal is to construct a non-visible rear yard addition by filling in the existing below-grade rear yard and to raise chimney flues at the roof of the building. This block plan illustrates the existing conditions at the building within the block. Outlined in red is the property in question, 257. The hatched area shows the proposed addition hatched in red, and the other hatched areas indicate existing extensions at buildings throughout the block. The proposed elevation shows a stair bulkhead at the roof, which is being reviewed at staff level, but its proposed construction is the reason for the raising of the chimney flues. The flues do not qualify for staff level review because they do not meet the rules requirement for minimal visibility. The rear facade elevation shows the proposed interior conditions at the rear addition. If you draw your attention to the lower portion of the rear facade here indicated by my mouse, that is actually showing the interior conditions. This is the existing section. Note that the rear yard indicated by my cursor is below the grade of the adjacent rear yards. The proposed section shows that the rear yard will be enclosed to create an addition. The rear yard addition does not qualify for staff level review because it extends all the way to the rear lot line and eliminates the presence of a rear yard. These are the existing and proposed floor plans for the cellar. For the first floor and for the roof. The following slides illustrate the mock-up of the chimney flues, which is indicated by this blue tarp, the taller blue tarp I'm indicating with my cursor, not the one indicated as the bulkhead. So this is looking at the mock-up of the chimney flues directly across the over the primary facade here in blue on the left, and then rendered on the right. This view is taken from the corner of West 4th Street and Charles Street. You can see again in the left the blue tarp indicating the flues. On the right, the rendered image. This is a little further back on West 4th Street past Charles Street. And this is looking the other way on West 4th Street from Perry Street. And you'll catch some of the flues here over the primary facade. Finally, these slides consist of photos of the conditions at within the block, indicating some existing extensions here. In this slide, you'll see existing and proposed. Note that on the proposed building, which is indicated over here, that the below grade addition is not going to be visible. It's not even visible from within the block. And lastly, these are existing conditions at the rear yard. And that's the proposal.
Thank you, Julianne. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay, so let's see if we have any testimony. If you're here to speak, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And Lisa will begin with those who have signed up first. Lisa?
Yes, nobody signed up and I do not see any hands raised.
And Rich, do we have any written testimony?
We do have a resolution from the community board recommending approval.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so commissioners, any final questions for Julianne or the applicant? Okay, so I think we will move to close our hearing. Commissioner Devonshire, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed, and I think this is a pretty straightforward application, I think, and is really here for technicality reasons. And so the staff, under the rules, the staff can't approve a full lot addition. But as we saw in the presentation, this is not eliminating a rear yard. It's cut off from the rest of the green space. Its grade is different from the adjacent yards, and it's not visible from anywhere. And also the staff, under the new rules, can approve chimneys that are visible up to 12 inches over a primary facade. And so these are a little bit more visible, but I think within the scope of or the amount of visibility that the commission has approved on other similar rows with uniform cornice lines. So I think if anyone has a differing opinion about either aspect of the project, raise your hand and I'll call on you, just in the interest of time. Everybody good? Okay. So I think we'll go ahead and if everybody agrees, and make a motion. And Commissioner Chapin, would you read the motion, please?
Yes, thank you. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 21-00233, 257 West 4th Street, Greenwich Village Historic District. An Italianate style row house designed by Robert Mook and built in 1870 to 71. Application is to construct a rear yard addition and extend chimney flues. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the rear yard addition will not be visible from any public thoroughfares, that the proposed one-story rear addition is modest in scale and will be consistent with other rear yard additions at this block in terms of height and footprint, that eliminating the presence of this small rear yard, which is largely cut off from the other rear yards by neighboring buildings, will not detract from the central green space, that the extended flues will be in keeping with utilitarian rooftop accretions found within the surrounding land streetscape and throughout the historic district in terms of their material, finish, and visibility from public thoroughfares, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District.
All right, and Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Rich, will you call the vote?
Sorry, I was on mute. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
And Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
Approved, and we'll move to the next item now.
The next item is number 11, LPC 21-00050, application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 994, lot 45, 130 West 42nd Street, Bush Tower individual landmark. Neo-Gothic style commercial building designed by Helmley and Corbett and built in 1916 to 18. The application is to replace roofing.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the presentation. Please unmute yourself and state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Okay, going to share it. We're not sharing. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you sharing the presentation?
Yes, you should be able to see it, and if you just click on the presentation, you'll activate it to then be able to advance the slides.
Okay.
We don't see it yet.
We don't see the presentation right now.
You have control of the screen at the notices indicating that you do have control. Do you have
Here
it
we are.
on?
See it now.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Granville. I'm an architect with Darius Tarby Architects. We've been working at 130 West 42nd Street for a number of years, and we're presenting today our proposal for replacement of the roof at the very top of the building, the tower roof. How do we advance this now? The building is located on 42nd Street on the south side of the block between 6th Avenue and Broadway. Was built in around 1916. At the time of its construction, it was quite a freestanding building, which you can see from these historic images. The roof in question is at the very top of the structure up here. Now, the building has a little more company in terms of a high-rise building built to its west side and some slightly taller buildings to its right. It's in a more dense context than it originally was.
Oh, shit.
There's been a lot of restoration work done at the property over the years, and including recreation of the historic storefront. At the upper floors of the building, a great deal of masonry and terracotta restoration and restoration of the structural steel frame of the building behind all this, which was in a great deal of trouble. There's been some replacement of copper ornament lanterns at the south facade of the building. That's our north facade of the building. And what we are now talking about today is replacement of the roof at the very top of the building, which is barely visible from any public vantage point. This is a view of the building from the east on 42nd Street across 6th Avenue, and you can see the top is very minimally visible. This is another view of the building from the west, from Times Square, and you can see the new high-rise next to it is blocking view of the building from the west. The roof of the building is hip-roofed structure. It is steel framed with concrete encasement and a lightweight concrete structural roof slab. The building originally was clad in batten seam copper, and sometime in the distant past was covered entirely with modified bitumen roofing, and the battens were covered in a bituminous mastic. If you notice the lower right-hand corner photo, what you're looking at is the armature that once supported a fleur-de-lis ornament. These were present at both the north and south ends of this hip-roofed roof. The fleur-de-lis have been missing for decades. Only thing remaining at this point is the steel armature at the north side. At the south side, that exposed armature had become so weathered and rusted that it actually broke off at its base where it connected to the roof structure and skidded down to the built-in gutter and is no longer attached to the building at the south side. These are some close-up images of the conditions of the current roof. We had made probes to check the layerings there. You can see a little bit of copper folded up here. The lightweight concrete slab below. The image on the right shows the splitting open of the coverings over the batten seam roofs, the batten seams up the roof. Originally, the building was copper clad at the roof, as I said, and what we are proposing today is to remove all of the existing roofing, the later installed modified bitumen and the copper, and to replace all of it with a cold fluid applied catalyzed resin roofing of PMMA chemistry. The trade name for it is Ciplast Parapro in a patina green finish, recreating the batten profiles as you've seen in this sample here. Our criteria for making this decision are as follows. Being 400 feet above the sidewalk and minimally visible, we felt that it was appropriate to propose a different material and one that we feel has advantageous performance qualities. We have concerns about reinstalling a copper roof on this very tall building, given the increasingly severe weather patterns we're seeing as the years go by, and our concerns about future wind uplift attaching a copper roof to a 100-plus-year-old lightweight concrete substrate. The cold fluid applied roofing is fully adhered over every inch of the substrate and has very highly tested wind uplift characteristics. We also feel that it will be safer to handle during installation versus moving around larger panels of copper. We'll also gain the patina look immediately rather than waiting for it to occur over a long period of time. This type of roofing has been installed at historic buildings in New York City, albeit without battens. We would be going a little further with our reproduction of the historic look. One being at the New York Stock Exchange lower roof, which you can see here, and another at 250 West 57th Street, not a landmark, but a building of some historic interest. This is a view of the building from a building across the street, showing the existing conditions and a rendering of what the patina green PMMA roofing would look like. And these are the project drawings. This is the original, this is current configuration of the batten panels. This is the proposed roofing mimicking those same panels. These are elevations of the roof, and worth dwelling on for a moment are the conditions at the two ridge ends, which show a plinth base for the former fleur-de-lis, which would be maintained and would also be covered with the PMMA roofing membrane. These are some detailed drawings showing the built-in gutter at the base of the roof. The batten seam would run down to close to the built-in gutter as the original ones do, although none of this is in any way visible from the street. This is a detail of the reinstallation of the battens and the roofing over it. And this is a couple of details of the ridge of the building. There is a batten profile at the very top of the ridge, which we'll be reproducing, which runs into the plinth bases at the ridge ends that used to support the fleur-de-lis. Last slide is a detail at the ridge ends. We are not proposing to maintain the armature for the fleur-de-lis, but rather to remove them. They would be reinstallable at a later date if that was so desired. The roofing product that we're recommending be used here is particularly suitable to waterproofing around the fleur-de-lis armature, in as much as a liquid, it is conformable to elaborate shapes very tightly and adheres very well. And the future armature could be recreated by opening up the top, installing the armature connection to the ridge beam, and re-waterproofing using the same material, which bonds very well to itself. That's our presentation, and any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, not seeing any hands raised. Let's see if we have any public testimony. If there's anyone in the meeting who would like to speak, please raise your hand, and I'll turn it over to Lisa Kersavage, who will walk us through the public speakers.
Okay, great. Kelly Carroll, bring you in as a panelist.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. Copper batten seam roofing is one of the most effective roofing technologies ever developed and had a lifespan of nearly a century here atop Bush Tower. HDC was dismayed to learn that the roof will be replaced by PVC covered in a membrane and painted a patina. This roof should be replaced in a copper system, especially because it is an individual landmark. We were also disappointed to see the removal of the finials armature, which eliminates any hope for their return. The fleur-de-lis finials were the finishing touches and defining features of this neo-Gothic skyscraper. Their presence in defining the roof line was significant, as evident in the historic photographs. We ask for a more considerate treatment of this landmark's roof. If it is not feasible to restore the finials at this time, at least retain their posts so that one day they might be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that Kelly was the only person that.
Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
We do. We have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 5 recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'd just like to turn back to the applicant and see if you'd like to respond to the comments in the testimony.
We do respect the performance attributes of copper roofs, and that those statements are certainly true in certain contexts, but our concern with respect to copper installation here has to do with the height of the building, the increasing severity of weather and high winds, and the age of the substrate we're attaching to. We feel that the full adhesion of the roofing that we're presenting is a better option for resistance to wind uplift. I just would also say it's not a PVC roof with a painted on finish. The actual roof membrane itself, which is liquid applied, is the patina green color. So it's a permanent application that would not need to be recoated at any point in the future. And then with respect to the armature reinstallations, we don't think that covering the roofing and the plinths that the fleur-de-lis once sat on at this time precludes reinstallation of the armatures and the fleur-de-lis in the future at all. The plinths can be opened up again and the steel ridge beam accessed again and the connections made just as they would be today. And again, the roofing membrane that we're proposing to use is very highly suited to being opened and patched and seamlessly rejoined together. So we do think that the option to restore the fleur-de-lis in the future remains possible.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? All right, and I'm going to start unmuting everyone so we can close the hearing.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes, please
sorry.
go ahead.
I'm wondering if Michael Devonshire or someone else can respond to that point about the copper being sort of, in a sense, less appropriate or less stable in a tall situation, and there is the effect of wind factors and other things. I don't think I really understand that. Is Michael?
Sure.
Did I respond?
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
I will only respond by saying that our office very recently restored a similar roof on the Steinway building, similar condition, not as tall, but you know, once you're that high, the weather really doesn't change that much. We reinstalled on an individual landmark a copper roof. It was okayed by 2 different structural engineering firms. And if I can take one step further, I will say that this is an individual landmark and it deserves a replication of the original copper roof. There are no issues that we were able to identify that preclude replacing copper with copper, including lightweight concrete substrate.
Okay, thank you. And since we're still in the hearing mode and have in questions, I don't know if the applicant also wants to address that as well now.
Sure. Another criteria for us was safety and the very constricted access to this very high and tall roof. And we feel that installation of large panels of copper here is a bit awkward and challenging up at this height, and the liquid applied roofing would be also safer during the installation.
Okay, other questions before we close the hearing? Okay, so let's have a motion to close the hearing. And Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and I also want to just note for the record that Commissioner Bland has left for the day. He left at the beginning of the presentation. Okay, so, oh, we have to vote. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. And so I think Commissioner Devonshire, I think you have started with I think your opinion is that this should be replaced in copper. I don't know if that's changed in the last minute.
I'll take inappropriate replacements for 1,000, Bob. No, I feel very strongly that this building deserves a new copper roof. In terms of lift and substrate, it's very easy to bolt through the lightweight concrete. I mean, we've done it several times, and we've just completed one on the Steinway building. And this building to me is as important as the Steinway was. I think this needs to be copper.
Okay, and is this, I'm just trying to remember, and I should know it well, but this roof is somewhat shallow and very high up, and I wondered if the Steinway roof was more visible than this is.
It's probably a little less visible,
Okay.
but no less important.
Okay, Commissioner, I'll go back the other way. So Commissioner Goldblum.
I agree with Michael.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin.
My original thought was that it was not that visible, but I do agree because it's an individual landmark. I think I really agree with Commissioner Devonshire and Commissioner Goldblum.
Okay, Commissioner Halford Smith.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It's a much longer term solution. And I might suggest that if they do proceed to install the copper, that they could install at this time a stub, a post up to the copper to accept the future fleur-de-lis, so that they don't have to open it up if they ever decide to put that in.
Okay. All right, and Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Yes, I'm in agreement with all of those comments.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson.
Forever right or forever wrong. It's copper.
And Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Jefferson, I think you're muted if you can hit unmute. Commissioner Jefferson.
Looks like his screen froze.
I think he's, yeah, frozen. He did unmute. Okay. Well, I think he's having some technical difficulties, but we have at this point 6 people who would not support the proposal and would only support copper. So I think that with 8 of us present, that's definitely the consensus around the table. And so we'll go ahead and make a motion, and I will do this one. So in the matter of docket number 21-00050, 130 West 42nd Street, the Bush Tower, an individual landmark, a neo-Gothic style commercial building designed by Helmley and Corbett and built in 1916 to 1918. This is an application to replace roofing, and we recommend denial, finding that the use of substitute materials for the historic roofing would be inconsistent with the original copper material used at this and other locations on the building, and that the proposed work will detract from this individual landmark. And Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
Commissioner Devonshire, you're muted.
I second that.
Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson. Okay, I think we lost Commissioner Jefferson. And Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 7 in favor and 1 not present, the motion carries.
To the next and final item.
Yes, this will be the last item of the day, item number 12, LPC 20-10930, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1891, lot 1, 320 Riverside Drive in the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 2, a Renaissance Revival style apartment building designed by Leo F. Nust and built in 1928. The application is to install a bay window at the Penthouse.
And the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the application of the presentation. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Hi, this is Stephen Spandl, the architect for the project.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm trying to see if I can get the screen to move here. There we go. Okay, so the project is at the corner of 104th Street and Riverside Drive. This is the penthouse of the unit. Apologies, I'm having a bit of trouble getting it to move along here. Okay, moving along with the block plan showing the location. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see Penthouse A called out. It's the corner penthouse unit. And you can see a small red circle. That is the area where we're looking at putting a small bump out for a bay. It protrudes onto the terrace of the unit.
You can use the mouse to click through on the slides to advance them, or you can use an arrow key if you have a keyboard.
Okay, I'm on an iPad, unfortunately, so it's giving me trouble. So my apologies. Okay, so here we have a few views from Riverside Drive from the park. View 1 is the view at 100 feet. We've kind of filled in the windows. Construction is happening on the unit currently, so we filled in the windows with an orange highlighter. So you can see what we're doing here. View 2 is at 250 feet, so you can see it becomes slightly more visible. The orange sliver that you can see on the far right-hand side of view 2, the view from 250 feet, is the top of the bay window. Okay, another view from 500 feet away. And then on the view from the east, this is just showing a neighboring unit that has a greenhouse on it. You can't see our unit or the proposed bay at all from that view. Okay, oh, sorry. Okay. My apologies. This is giving me a lot of trouble.
No worries. No worries.
It's easier. I can advance the slides for you.
If you don't mind, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
that's so
fine.
sorry.
Do you want to be on L13 or did you need to go earlier?
If you don't mind going back just a little bit. One more, a couple more. Okay, here we go. Okay, so there's the one that we finished up on. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a floor plan on the left-hand side showing the approved plan for the unit. The fenestration in question is circled in the red rectangle. On the right-hand side, you can see the extent of the bay assembly that we're proposing. So it protrudes roughly 27 inches onto the terrace. The front face of it is the window that's already approved. If you want to move on to the next slide. Okay, in elevation, you can see elevation 1, the door unit that has already been approved by the LPC at a staff level. Elevation 2 shows how we would change that into a projecting bay. So basically it receives corner post and a slight roof. Moving on, here we can see the side view from the west. So top is existing, bottom shows the side view of the bay window. We can move on. It's a section cut through the unit. Once again, just showing the projection of it onto the terrace. Moving on. Okay, this is a view, a sight line from 250 feet away. Moving on to the next. This is a sight line from 104th Street at 50 feet away, so it's really not visible at all from 104th. Section through the building, the same sight line. And some details of the unit. The windows are painted a dark brown to match the LPC approved color for the building. Move on to the next. The roof of it is proposed in a Freedom Gray copper, sort of a lead coated copper color. And can move on to the next. And that's it. Apologies again for the trouble with the slides.
And if I could just jump in, commissioners, what we're really looking at here is effectively a very small addition. You know, it has a slight amount of space, it expands the existing footprint, and it's, again, somewhat visible from a distance. And so that means it's not eligible for staff level review. So it looks similar to the window that was already approved, but bumping it out that 2.5 feet or so is what's triggering this.
Are there any questions? All right, let's see if we have any public testimony. And I see a hand raised. So if you're here to speak, raise your hand and Lisa will call on you momentarily. Lisa?
Okay, Michelle Parker, I see your hand raised. And as a panelist, please just state your name for the record.
Good afternoon.
And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Parker. I am the co-chair of the CB7 Preservation Committee where this application lies. Our board approved this application in large part because all of the work was previously approved by LPC and all the materials, light patterns, colors, and finishes will remain the same. The minimally visible, it is minimally visible, but mostly from Riverside Park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have anybody else.
Sorry, I'm muted. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Aside from the community board, we do have a letter from Landmark West in support of the application.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, any final questions about the project or the amount of visibility? Okay. So I think we will, unless the applicant, does the applicant have any final comment they'd like to make?
No comments.
Okay, so we will go ahead and make a motion to close the hearing. And Commissioner Chapin, would you make that motion?
Motion to close the hearing.
And Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, and Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you like to take this one?
We didn't vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the hearing is closed and now we'll move to our discussion. And Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you start us off?
Sure. I think that this is absolutely modest and approvable, and I approve.
Okay, and Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree. It's very modest and approvable.
And Commissioner Chapin?
I agree.
Commissioner Goldblum?
Two.
Commissioner Devonshire?
Approved.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Approve.
Commissioner Gustafson?
Yep, agreed.
All right, so I think we are all in agreement. And Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you read that motion?
Of course. In the matter of LPC 10930 320 Riverside Drive, Riverside West End Historic District Extension 2, a Renaissance Revival style apartment building designed by Leo F. Knust and built in 1928. Application is to install a bay window at the penthouse. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 2, and I recommend approval finding. The proposed projecting bay at the south penthouse facade will be only minimally visible from limited distant points on public thoroughfares to the southwest, that the presence of the steel and glass bay will be in keeping with the existing metal and glass greenhouse addition at the eastern penthouse facade, as well as with metal and glass additions often found at penthouse facades, that the new French doors, sidelights, and transoms of the proposed bay will match the fenestration approved previously at the surrounding penthouse facade in terms of material configuration, operation, details, and finish, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building and the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 2.
Holford Smith, would you second that motion?
I second it.
All right, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
and Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, so that's approved, and that's our final item for the day. So I want to thank you all for a long day. Thank you all for starting early. And I think we had some very interesting projects today and some great discussions. And we will have, again, a fairly long agenda tomorrow, next Tuesday, it looks like. So enjoy your week, and we'll see you next week.
Sarah, if I could read one item into the record
yes.
real quickly, I'm going to do that, please.
Yes.
That is LPC 21-01179, 201 Park Avenue South, the Germania Life Insurance Building Individual Landmark. We're going to read that into the record to be presented at a future public hearing. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thank you,
See
Sarah.
next week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Be well.
Be well.
Be well.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Aye.